Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is David Russell Jensen. My Tlingit name is Shakaguk. Today is another lecture in Sealaska Heritage's lecture series. Sealaska Heritage Institute is a Native nonprofit organization dedicated to perpetuating and enhancing the Tlingit, Haida, and Tsimshian cultures of Southeast Alaska. As a nonprofit organization, Sealaska Heritage couldn't do our work without the generosity and support of donors. If you would like to donate to Sealaska Heritage, please visit sealaskaheritage.org/giving. Our lecture today is given by Jennifer Younger, an award-winning Tlingit artist based in Sitka. Younger is of the Eagle Kaagwaantaan clan. Raised in the Southeast Alaska town of Yakutat, she was surrounded by nature and the traditional way of life. Younger draws inspiration from traditional Tlingit formline designs, historic artifacts, spruce root basket weaving patterns, and the contrast and texture of metals. If you're joining us in person, please remember to silence your cell phones, and there will be an opportunity for questions at the end. Please welcome Jennifer Younger.
Thank you, David, for that introduction. And thank you all for coming out to listen to me. I was kind of nervous about this, but this is an example of getting out of your comfort zone. And hopefully my story will help inspire some of you on your artistic journey or just any changing career and your career path. Like David said, I'm from Yakutat. I currently live in Sitka, and that's where I work making all of these things. And I'm going to start a slideshow here. And as I'm talking, it's just to show you a compilation of my work. Some older pieces from when I first started doing jewelry and accessories about 13 years ago now, and some newer stuff. And it'll loop just a couple of times so you can get a second look if you miss something. But let me think. There's kind of two stories that come together to get me to where I am now. And I grew up in Yakutat. And my family lived out of town, and that wasn't very far out of town. It was like a mile and a half from the rest of the town, but it was windy dirt road, and the only neighbors we had were my grandparents, and we didn't have any electricity, we didn't have running water. I didn't have a TV. I think a lot of times when we were inside, my mom was always pushing like drawing and crafts and making things. So I grew up, doing art, liking drawing, even through like my elementary education and high school. I always took art classes and I loved art. I loved to draw, I loved acrylic painting, watercolor painting. But when it came time to graduate, I never really thought there was a possibility of having a career in any kind of art. In my time, which was quite a while ago, graduating, I met Lance shortly after that, but I didn't really think you could have a career in art. It was always, you'd always hear that term, starving artist. So for me, I thought, well, what am I going to do with my life? And then I was like, well, I'm not going to go to college. It just didn't seem right for me because I just had no idea. So I graduated, I got out into the workforce, and I always knew, or I always thought I should be responsible and have a job. And even if you don't like the job, you're going to work and pay your bills and be responsible until something better comes along. And I did that for quite a few years, and I was getting, my late 30s, and I was still thinking, what do I want to be when I grow up? At this time, I still wasn't practicing any art. I did, at that time, I was starting to feel, well, let me backtrack. So, up into my mid-30s, just working, and I worked, at Search for quite a few years. I had a job working at new accounts at a bank. I was an office supply store manager. I had cleaned houses. I had driven taxi. I had done all sorts of things. And switching gears now back to my Tlingit grandmother, she came from Kaagwaantaan, and when she was a young girl, she was removed from her home and put in the Wrangell Institute. And, after that, I think she came to Juneau, and she married and moved to Yakutat. And through her experience at that residential school, and not being from Yakutat and connected to the Tlingit people there, and living out of town, she didn't speak the language, the Tlingit language, and she didn't really talk about who she was, where she was from, and her family. We, had a subsistence lifestyle, but we didn't really learn a lot. We weren't involved. I was surrounded by, ceremony and like the dance and I saw it all around me. I saw formline design, but I didn't understand it. So it wasn't really, it wasn't taught by her. Whereas with my other grandparents, I knew about their heritage. I knew where they were from because they were proud of it, and they, told stories and they talked about it, but never with my Tlingit grandmother. And as I got into my adult life and living in Southeast Alaska, I just felt this disconnect. Like I was proud of that part of my heritage, but I'm surrounded by it and I live here, and I just felt like I didn't understand. I didn't fully understand. Like I didn't know the language. I could see formline, but I couldn't understand the forms and how to put it all together. And I felt like something was missing. And, as I'm working and trying to figure out what I'm going to be when I grow up, I wanted to learn something related to my grandmother's heritage and something that I could pass down to my kids. And at that time, I had the opportunity to work with Terry Rothkar, who many of you know, renowned weaver. And I worked with her and my mom. She had taught my mom also. And so both of them taught me to weave, to gather the roots, process the roots, and all that work that it took. And I really enjoyed that experience. But once I learned, and I'm by no means an expert at all, I can weave. I don't know how to do any of the patterns or anything. But I learned how to weave, and it just didn't capture me. I thought, okay, now I know what's next. And so after that, I had the opportunity to work with Nicholas Glannon. It was a really small grant. It was enough to pay him for 2 weeks of doing, working in metalwork. And so we started that, and he, was and has been so gracious in once an apprentice, always apprentice is what he says. And so I started working with him, and it was more of, learning what tools were needed to do metalwork. And I still wasn't sure, this is maybe just something I'm going to check out, and give it a try. But once I started, I fell in love with it. And I had the opportunity to work with Dave Galanin, Nick's dad, and I would spend, several hours a day, Monday through Friday, at his shop. And a lot of the time spent with him was talking about formline design. not about actually creating things, but talking about, design. And I learned a lot from him, just about more of like cultural stuff and stories he would tell. And so that was a really awesome experience. And so I tell this one story all the time. So when I first started, I saw all the designs that everybody else was making, and it was a lot of shiny silver and the same, like lovebird designs. And I thought, okay, I need to learn how to do that. I need to make shiny lovebirds. And, but one day I was working with him, and I'll never forget this moment. And I said, Dave, I've never seen a formline spider. And he said, make one, do it. He goes, just do proper formline. And then I literally, I still remember that feeling. It was just like, poof, the whole world opened up to me. And after that, I feel like I've just kind of gone crazy with getting an idea. And I'm like, I can do this. Just try to do proper formline. And so now when I'm creating, Dave, he passed several years ago. And now when I'm creating in my little space, I always think, okay, am I honoring Dave by doing the best formline that I can? I'm by no means an expert on that either. I'm not, things don't always flow so easy for me, but in that department. But the moral of that part of my story is, I didn't start doing what you're seeing here until I was 40. And, so to me, it's like never, I would like to get the message out that it's never too late to change careers and follow your passion. Because now I like to say that I'm really obsessed with what I do. Like standing here right now, I'm thinking of what I could be doing in my workshop. I'm not kidding. That's not a joke either. I brought stuff with me for the hotel room too. I'm really obsessed, but I mean it in the best way. It just really brings me joy, right? It just excites me because it's that freedom to create. But so that's a little bit about kind of how I got started. And after that, I started, I'm just trying to think of you're starting out as an artist, what advice do I have? And I think getting your name out there, doing markets, doing shows. A lot of people have asked me when I travel to, say across the country or internationally, why are you going there? Why are you going so far away? I mean, I can stay here, but for some reason, and at the time, I didn't really know why I chose to try to reach out farther. But now I feel like my purpose, at least I like the idea of sharing Northwest Coast art with the world. If I can share and share it with the world to show people that we're still making beautiful things, we're still here. And in Southeast Alaska, and, we have, we have so many amazing artists here that if I can reach out and draw people in, even if they don't necessarily like what I do, there are so many other amazing artists in Southeast Alaska, and along the coast, and making amazing contemporary Northwest Coast art. So that is, why it's important for me to reach as far as I can, to hopefully help the next generation too, who are learning and creating and sharing their work. And then with a lot of these shows, they're not always, these things look shiny and fun and exciting, but there's it's a lot of work. There's a lot of hustle that goes into this, and a lot of the, you might see if you follow me on social media, oh, she's going here, she's going there, she's doing this show. It's not all about money. I'm not out there, doing these things and making a lot of money. Some things, sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't. But a lot of it is the connections that you make and building community, connections that you can make sometimes you don't even really know. The first year I went to Toronto Indigenous Fashion Week, and I had a booth. And, this is like far away from here, and people don't necessarily recognize the art form, and so they walk by your booth and they look at it and they're kind of like, okay, what is this? So that stuff happens. And I've always tried to maintain like a good attitude about it. Like, okay, I made enough to cover my expenses, and then we'll see what happens. And like that example, some guy had come by my table, he bought a pendant, and several months later he reached out to me and he said, I'm doing a show. He was a clothing designer, it turns out. And he was doing a show in London. It was going to be through the British Fashion Council at Somerset House in London, doing an exhibit. And he asked if I would create for that. So, I may not have made money, but I had this amazing experience, and to have my work exhibited internationally. Another example, I don't know, did I pause that on accident? You guys have been staring at that I'm so sorry. Let me move that little, like the hat, that's what I was going to talk about. Another example is someone told me for years, to go to Res Las Vegas. That's happening right now this week. It's a big conference going on that has like this little side market. And so this person had been telling me for several years, you gotta go. So I go and I get a booth. And again, it's like people are there for the conference, not necessarily there for the market. So, but I got to go to Vegas. And, I met a guy there who came by the booth and chatted, and it was nice, whatever. And 6 months later, he reached out to me and he, connected me with Thunder Voice Hat Company, and we've gone on to do some amazing collaborations. So, it's not all about, at least for me, I can sit home and work and make money, like sell, try to, be a machine and try to sell stuff. But it's just so gratifying to get out into the world and make these connections, do collaborations. And the collaborations are so cool because we're able to share each other's work. So, those are really inspiring to me. It's like, what can we do together to share each other's work and promote each other? I have my phone here for some notes so I can... So when I first started out, and it was the first market I had done outside of Alaska, it was at the Burke Museum, and they introduced me to Elizabeth Steinbrook, and she owns Steinbrook Native Gallery in Seattle, and she wanted to see my work to possibly, I could sell wholesale to her, and she had told me that working with artists from Southeast, people from Southeast Alaska are really quiet. They don't really promote their work. Right? Because she also does a lot of work with people in BC area. So when she told me that, I was like, okay, I gotta... So you'll see, like, I'm always trying to promote and share my stuff on social media. I try to speak up as far as like reaching out to people to work together, and be advocate for my own work. It's really hard because, I don't know, I don't really like talking about myself. But so she gave me that advice though, and I'm like, okay, we have to promote ourselves and share our work. And so I think that's important. but I'm mostly, like David mentioned, like I grew up, surrounded by nature, and a lot of like what I do, I feel like is, I really love working with copper because it's very organic feeling. I'm not the shiny silver kind of person. I like things that feel more organic. So I do a lot of work with copper and incorporating floral patterns. And I do that's just another way to kind of draw in people who are non-native and unsure if they could wear the pieces that I'm making. And I feel like if I do, like, say I do a piece that's, wild roses, and then I just add in a little like formline butterfly, it's kind of like seeping into their world and exposing them a little bit. So I like to do that. Oh, go ahead, David. Sure, yeah.
If you would like some questions. Alicia in Klawock, who's a student, asked, is everything handmade, or do you have products made in a factory?
Oh, gosh. Yeah, everything is handmade by me. I have people ask me too a lot of times, like, why don't you have an apprentice or have someone else do, different parts of things. But I feel like for me, it's special. I like, that it's made by me and handmade by me. So yeah, everything that you see, that's why I'm in my shop for like 12 hours at a time. No.
We have another one. What was your most memorable piece you have made?
Oh boy. I have several things that were very special and very meaningful. First off, I would say the pieces that I've done for the herring protectors, the tana, and then the 6 robes that I designed for them. And that was really special because it was kind of a full circle moment, having, feeling that gap when my grandmother didn't really pass down a lot about our heritage, to being Eagle and then having the Raven Kiksati clan ask me to design for them. That in Sitka, that was a huge honor and very special. Like, I felt like I'm not a public speaker type person, and they're trying to raise awareness about the overfishing of herring. And if I couldn't get out and speak about it, it was my way of helping them make a statement. So that was really special. And then I've done a few things with my mom, who is still doing the spruce root weaving. So collaborating with her with copper work and her spruce root. So yeah, those are a couple special things that I've done. And I think they're somewhere in, well, we did that together too for the herring protectors. So yeah.
Hey, I heard that you love building the pieces yourself. Like, this looks so intense with the putting all the rings together, which is a thing that an apprentice could do, or a support person. And I get it that you want to be the person to, do all of it from start to finish with no support there. If there were 3 other non-construction of jewelry and fine art pieces, 3 other tasks that someone else could do, what are those 3 things that you would surrender to someone else to have them take some of that unpaid work off of your table?
Right. I think, I know. I should do that. She's been after me. But yeah, I guess as far as like, when you do feel like you're getting overwhelmed and you have a lot of work to do, if you're fortunate enough to be keeping super busy in your art form, there's stuff, like postage, shipping stuff, scheduling, doing emails, stuff like that. It would be, and I think you and I have discussed this before, where maybe some other artists and you guys can work together and hire one person, and that one person can work, for several of you, if that works. Or maybe there's someone who just wants to get out of the house in a few hours and work for you. So I need to establish that for myself.
We have more online questions. Are you still learning and improving in your style as an artist?
Good question. Yes, that's kind of on my my list to talk about. But I think always improving. I've been asked, to be honest, I think I've been asked by SHI if I would teach formline. And my immediate reaction is no. I might look like I know what I'm doing. No. I feel like I'm still learning, and I've been at this, what I'm doing for like 13 years or so, and I am by no means an expert, and maybe someone else feels comfortable with that. I don't. And I don't know how you determine, that where that line is of who can teach, but I'm still learning. I've taken classes with, several of the classes that SHI has offered for beginning formline, because I thought, well, I'm already doing formline and I've been doing it for so many years, but let me take a look at the basics. And just, I don't know, I guess to me, there's always room for improvement. I've taken another, intermediate one. Yeah, always learning. And if you don't have access to those things, most of us have access to the internet now. I think those classes and things are available through SHI. There's lots of books. I look for books that have, art done by some of my favorite artists, and I reference those when I'm unsure about how to put things together. And so I feel like you should always be trying to improve. I don't know. The question.
You mentioned earlier that part of what kicked you off was the notion that you hadn't seen a formline spider and that you wanted to create one, and as long as you followed the basic rules of formline. What is your favorite original formline design? Like you hadn't seen anybody before, you created it. What's your favorite one?
Let's see. I probably have seen one. I really like that spider. I'm like, where is that? Where is that spider? Sometimes I wonder where things are now. I'm like, where did that go? I see an old picture. I really like doing like a skull design. I know I'm sure I've seen probably some format of a formline skull, like from like just a kind of a 2D looking kind of. But I really like doing the skull design, like kind of like the side view of a skull, and then adding some formline elements to it. So it's kind of realistic and formline. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Online, do you feel more connected to your people through the art you do?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I was able to go back to Yakutat this, when was it? I was to say this spring, but it's just now spring. Last fall, maybe. I went back to Yakutat and I taught a class there, and that felt really good, like to go back home and be teaching to, my home community and kind of giving back a little bit to them if I can. Yeah, definitely. Just trying to think of ways being here right now, feeling, just knowledge is power, right? Like, I feel like the more I know, the more, I don't know, the taller I stand. Sorry. Yeah, I definitely do.
Hi, thank you. It was very lovely to listen to you and your experience. My question is, what does your collaboration with other artists looks like, especially those they have a different medium, like Lily Gladstone, like it's like a different, she's artist, but completely different medium, or artists that they have a different background culturally, how this collaboration looks like, how you get to work together and experience and make sure that the artwork that you put out it's original to you and you still has the taste that you want.
Thank you. I have two examples that are both a bit different as far as collaborating, and one of them is with GNU, the indigenous-owned denim company, and that was the one that was stuck up there for a while, with the bandana, the yellow bandana. That raven design, they were designing a raven jean. They wanted to call it raven jean, and they wanted a formline raven for the patch on the jean, right? So they let me, design something in the shape that they needed for that. And that was pretty smooth and pretty easy and a little bit different for me because I'm usually just working, like in engraving and making my own kind of thing. But it went pretty seamlessly like that. But I have an upcoming collaboration, which is a bit different for me, and it's with an Ojibwe designer, and we'll be showing together at a show in May. And she reached out to me to ask if I would do copper accessories for her show. And it was in her designs, right? And they're not too, they are, but it's not too crazy of a design that she wants me to use. And that, I feel like if I have permission from her to create for her. But that does feel a little bit different, of is it okay? I don't want to, I'm always thinking when I'm doing stuff too, am I going to offend anyone? Is it okay? And questioning that. They're pretty, so far, I've had a lot of freedom with the hats that you see with the hat bands that I've engraved. It's all my designs. It's not incorporating, they'll just say, hey, send us some pieces. So I have that freedom to create. It's exciting for me just because it gets me out of my zone of whatever I'm working on, in my studio at the time. That's usually more jewelry related. So it's pretty exciting to do something like that. And I guess, my advice would be if it doesn't feel right too, then don't do it. I usually just kind of try to follow my gut, and it also depends on the relationship you have with the people too. I feel like getting to know them and their background, and it's not just jumping on every opportunity. And I think one other thing that's really important to mention, especially for any younger people listening at the school right now, is, doors close, and there's a lot of no's that happen, and they still happen, and it's taken me a long time to not take it personally. Things usually work out, and now I tell myself, okay, that wasn't meant to be. Even if I'm applying for a grant or something, there's a lot of no's with all of that, and it doesn't always work out. But I've learned over time, and maybe, someone else can learn at a younger age and not have to be, not have to go through it as much, but just, to remember that, things don't always work out, and doors do close, and you just keep working and stick to it, and don't give up. And things just always happen for a reason. I really do believe in that. And if you're patient, it's hard to be patient sometimes, but things just work out.
My question is actually a little bit in continuation of that. So, what are some skills that you have or that you have been developing that has been instrumental in your ability to take advantage of opportunities when they come? So as an artist or business person or entrepreneur, communicator, setting boundaries or setting expectations, what are some skills or tools that have been instrumental in you being able to take advantage of opportunities?
Yeah, great question. Well, let's see. I've been asked, since I didn't start doing metalwork until I was 40, I have had people ask, oh, don't you wish you started when you were 20 or whatever? And it's you can't have any regrets, number one, as far as because you can't go back in time anyway. But I look at it everything I did leading up until I started doing this has helped me. I worked in a bank, and, I've worked with, it was filing and paperwork and numbers and managing an office supply store, and you have to do orders, and you have, so all these little business things kind of gave me a foundation to help me as an artist, because now all I want to do is make stuff. I don't want to file my taxes. Not that I don't, I just don't want to pay that. No, sorry. But it's I know how to do all these things. It helps me stay organized in the administrative, paperwork and filing and all that business stuff. I kind of have some knowledge of that. So that's helped me get to, I don't know, I feel stay organized and be successful and not feel I'm floundering in that. So that's really helpful. But as far as, setting boundaries and stuff like that, boy, it's been a learning process. I think one thing that I really think about now is, like I mentioned earlier, following my gut about how I feel. People do reach out and ask about working together. It's does it feel right? And it's okay to say no. I think early on, I was always yes, 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 I want to do everything. I can do it. It's kind of pulling back and just realizing I have to set some boundaries. And because, people don't always stick to their word, or things don't always work out. And it's just really staying true to yourself is important, I think. That's been important for me anyway. So.
Okay. Thank you for your work and for your words. It's been really fun to watch your career take off, and just to see all these famous people wearing your stuff, and just seeing you travel around, it's just really amazing. And you're an innovator, and it's really fun to see you take the art in all these different places. I have a thought, and then I have a question. The thought was, I had to sort of talk to someone, like someone asked me for some formline advice, but it was really interesting because we were sort of talking, it was through like a Zoom, but I couldn't share the screen or anything, so I had to it felt like if someone sent you a picture of something they drew, and you called them on the phone to talk about some advice you might have about it. It was really interesting because then you have to think about how you even talk about it, because you have to say things like, okay, the bottom part of the top line of the ovoid, and then the top part of the inner ovoid. It's so interesting to me to think about how to talk about that stuff. Yeah. But it also forced me to because you could just draw on somebody's stuff. That's what one of my uncles used to do. He used to just draw on my stuff, and it would break my heart, but then I would okay, yeah, he's actually shown me some really good things here. But I thought it would be a really neat exercise to do, is to talk through formline without being able to show people, and that it was really interesting. And then my question is, formline and jewelry making and metalwork seem to have a lot of rules and a lot of expectations. So working within those rules and expectations, how do you then innovate and take it to new places? Where do you get your visions of, it'd be cool is to take this thing and do it this way?
I guess the rules that I feel are from formline. Otherwise, I'm do whatever you want. For real, that's how I mean, you could probably tell by, some of the stuff that you see. Even if there's an abstract, design, and there's just a little bit of formline and part of a design on this piece, is it still proper formline? As far as the balance, I guess, is what I'm thinking of. And I've had many conversations, like you were mentioning, well, no, the top has to be thicker like this, and the ovoid, and they have to balance, and they're like, what? But I honestly, it kind of worries me because I don't want to be disrespectful to the art form. So I do think about that. I really do. I don't think in the sense of just whatever, throw it out there. But I do really take into consideration the balance and the forms. And I know they're not always perfect. But otherwise, I feel like I want to make things that are contemporary and that appeal to the next generation, because I want it to be carried on. So I think when I was younger, and a lot of the jewelry that my grandmother had or other, I would see it, and I'm as I got older, I thought, well, that's traditional, and you'd wear it on a special occasion, and it felt older to me. It felt like something from the past. And I feel like when I'm creating, I want it to be something for here and now, or for the future. So that's kind of what is in the back of my mind, I guess.
One online. For small business owners, what are strategies that you use to manage growth while maintaining meaningful relationships and connections?
I feel like as far as marketing or promoting my work, I rely heavily on social media. Someone had recommended that I start Instagram. This was quite a while ago. I already had Facebook. Little did I know, right? But I was I'm not going to do Instagram. I was against it. I have my artist Facebook page, which is great. And then finally I was okay, fine, I'm going to figure out this Instagram thing. But I told myself, these are just things I don't know, I didn't know anything about running my own business or doing my own business, but I told myself when I do Instagram, it's going to be my work only. I'm not going to post pictures of my kids, my dinners, my cats, it was going to be all work related and try to be focused on that. And that's been great as far as like Facebook is great, Instagram is great, but you can reach the world and you can reach so many people. And through these platforms, I've made some amazing connections. Some people I still haven't met in person, but they've been great supporters, and we reach out to each other periodically and, just support each other as artists. So that's been a great way to kind of build a community throughout the country. Am I stuck on that again? Yeah, so I hope that answers the question.
I'm going to kind of riff on that last question from online. As a baseline, sustaining yourself month to month, what is your one a day, or like your thing that you have to make at least once a week that is kind of your, if we were screen printers or original painters, what's your silk screen print that is kind of paying your base bills on the daily? Like, is there a go-to earring set that you like to make, or this bracelet, or like a popular seller that you make every day or every week that sells online consistently? Are you aware of what that is? Do you prioritize that in a day of creation? And secondly, maybe I'll let you answer that question. I'll let you answer that one. I have one more question, if that's okay.
I do have a couple of things that seem to be like good sellers. And let's see, I would say wrap rings. The blue patina copper dagger earrings, and the mussel shells. And those always go, yeah. And, on that note, one thing Dave always told me, and I don't know if this was a curse or, but he when I was working with him, he said, work on something every day. And so I honestly am like, I'm like a fish out of water if I didn't do one little thing. If I just work on one little thing at least in the day, then I'm like, okay, I feel good.
We have another student question online. What is the biggest piece you have worked on?
Boy, the biggest piece. The dimes are cool, but the biggest piece, as far as non-jewelry related, it would be the robes. When we did 5 robes at a time and had those laid out and like putting all of that together, that was probably the biggest. As far as with metals, Dave and I both made we made a tana form and a tana, and it was probably about as big as the front of this podium. He made one and I made one. And that's probably the biggest piece I had done in metalwork. And there might be a picture of us together up in the slideshow as well.
Thanks for sharing all your knowledge. I was wondering, you shared that you started about 13 years ago. I was wondering, when did you feel comfortable with doing art events out of state? You mentioned the first one in Seattle. And then also, when did you feel comfortable going internationally?
Boy. Yes, like Lily said. It always feels like the first time. It really does. It really does. I was just thinking about it recently. Well, I can't remember when I first applied to Santa Fe Indian Market, because that's so big. There's almost 1,000 artists showing there. I don't know what gave me the courage to do that. I know that when I first started out, I was working part-time as a waitress because I had done all these other jobs, and then I had 2 little kids, and then I decided, I want to get back out and socialize a little bit. So I did a couple nights a week waitressing, and then I started doing the metal work. And then I was like, well, I think I started selling a few pieces. I'm like, wow, people like it? That's cool. And then I was like, well, if I stay home and make this, then I can let that job go. And it just kind of gradually built up. But I also had the mindset of, I need to go all in. Like I think at that point, I just wanted to jump in, and it's like, okay, I'm going to make every effort that I can to do this full time and then start promoting it. And I think it was at that time, it was like, okay, you got to try to get your work out there. But I don't think that feeling ever goes away of kind of feeling uncomfortable. But that's also kind of exciting too, right? The excitement, the anticipation. I did London Fashion Week for the first time, I think, might have been 2018. I didn't know anybody there. I don't know if I had even done a fashion show before, but I just thought, why not? And that's another reason I kind of do a lot of kind of things outside. It's exciting, and we only live once. Like, I'm going to go for it and do as much as I can.
Thanks. An online student question. Do you think you can connect to our Tlingit culture through this art?
Wait, say that again.
Do you think you can connect to our Tlingit culture through this art?
Yes. I mean, I feel like I have. But like I said, it has a lot to do with the connections in the community and people that you meet, talking to other artists, working with other artists. I feel like it's made a lot of connections for me.
Thank you. What would be your advice for artists who want to follow in your footsteps, so to speak, and get into metal work?
I would say to take all of the classes that we have. We're so fortunate to have like a lot of these classes, here in Juneau and throughout Southeast, through SHI, and they didn't pay me to say that. No. But it's true. It's true. I get these emails, right? And I see all of this stuff, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we have so many opportunities. I didn't have those. I was very lucky that I, got to work with Nick and Dave, and they, were so awesome to work with and live in my community. But take all of the classes and just know that it is hard work. And, this all looks pretty, like I said, but there's a lot of no's, and there's a lot of unpaid things, and there's a lot of, just a lot of hours that go into it. So it's a hustle. It's still a hustle.
Thanks. Another online question. Do you think the rules of formline will naturally be outgrown?
I would hope not. What? What? Never. Yeah. I'm sorry, whoever asked that, but please no. Don't, no.
Okay. Here's a student question. What resources do you recommend to learn about our formline and artwork?
Oh boy, what resources? Online here, there's a lot of resources. What I could do, maybe in the comments of this video that will be on YouTube, I can put a list of the books that I have that might be helpful to students or any of you that are here, just my favorites. I'll do that.
Okay, this is for when you make it a little bigger, or maybe, maybe this has happened for you. Question about larger commissions. When someone comes to you and says, I want a $20,000 piece, and they give you $10,000 up front, and it might take you 3 months to build the work. What do you do with that 10 grand while you're making the work before you get the other half of the commission? how do you ration it? Like Terry Rafkar, one of your mentors, would call it a Python payment, where this huge sum of money would come in, and then she was the python digesting the elephant. So really it was an elephant payment, and then she would have to digest it over the year and a half while she was weaving. So how would you manage 10 grand hitting your bank account, and then you have to work for 3 months on this massive thing that you can't necessarily make 12 other items a day? What do you do?
Well, I haven't done something quite like that. I have a lot of custom orders, but not in that like large sum. And I prefer not to accept any payment. What I'll do is reach out to somebody. And of course, everyone probably does it different. I prefer not to accept a payment. I am pretty much given the freedom to create with a few of their design elements. And then unless it's a very specific, but so far I have this freedom, and I would prefer not to accept payment, because if they change, I want them to be able to change their mind. If I can't get to it in 3 months time, if they've changed their mind, then we're done. I mean, I don't have to do anything. I don't have to try to, where are those funds, So that's how I handle it. And a lot of the large pieces that you see here, they're pieces I've done for shows, and then they sell afterwards, and then they're just bought outright, and I don't have to worry about that. I know, I don't want to have to worry about that kind of, yeah.
So when you're working, do you draw on paper and transfer, or do you draw directly on the metal? And how do you get it to show up on the metal?
I'm like, okay, don't listen, Dave. No. Well, he's like, you got to draw too. And I think his teacher made him draw for like a year before he even got to work with metal. I draw most of the time, majority of the time, I'd say 95% of the time, I draw right onto the metal. Once in a while, not as often drawing on paper. And I like it because, once again, it's just the way I do it. And I do kind of a rough outline, or just a sketch onto the metal with a pencil. And then it gives me that I still have freedom. I guess maybe I have this thing about freedom, but I still have that freedom to change it. Sometimes I have an idea and it seems really good, and then I start doing it and I'm like, I don't really like this, or, so then I can just shift a little bit and things change and they kind of morph into whatever, they become. As far as being able to draw on it, if you just take a really light sandpaper on the metal, because you're going to polish it afterwards anyway, then the pencil will show up better.
Well, thank you, Jennifer, for sharing your time and expertise with us. It was a great conversation and great to learn more about you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Yay!